Let me tell you a story. It's a story I don't really remember the beginning to because I don't remember why I became interested in Xenoblade Chronicles. Actually, no, I remember why. I don't remember when, but I can tell you why. I follow the Let's Player Chugga Conroy, and he did a great big old Let's Play of a game called Xenoblade Chronicles, which at the time I largely ignored. I subscribed to him for Pokemon Let's Plays and very little else. But I think it was probably around 2020 when he started Let's Playing Xenoblade Chronicles 2 that my attention returned to that franchise, and I went, well, I'm in the mood for a great big sprawling JRPG adventure, so I'm gonna start watching his Let's Play of the original one. And I watched that up to Magna Forest, which is going to be a bit of a recurring theme here, that place. And I decided I'm going to stop watching this wonderful Let's Play because I'm enjoying this story and of the game and this game world so much that I want to experience it for myself. Especially since he was playing the original Wii version, because this was before the Switch version came out, and I had a Switch. And so I got it on Switch 1, and I very excitedly downloaded it and played it. And the problem was, I had just watched all of this story on Chugga Conroy's Let's Play, and while I was now watching these cutscenes with nicer visuals and stuff, sure, and I was getting to play the game for myself, that could only carry my interest for so long, and I ended up spending about 5 years just kind of playing it in spurts and trying to remember how to play it, and I would play like through a zone and then I would get distracted by something else, and I'd play for another zone, I'd get distracted by something else, until I ended up at Magna Forest. And I started to play a little bit past where I'd seen in the playthrough, but I never got past Magna Forest. In fact, I can tell you exactly where I got to. And before I go any further, I should say this is going to be a full spoiler thing. I'm going to be talking about very spoilery plot details because I would like to give you my reactions to them. So if you haven't played the game, do yourself a favor and go play the game and then get back to me. But yeah, so to get into spoilers, I suppose, I got to the point in Magna Forest where you get the hero pawn on your team and you go fight the Telethia. And I seem to remember, like, last year at one point, I returned to the game and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't damage the Telethia because I spent so long between play sessions that I'd forgotten the tutorial teaching me how to damage it. And it was around that point I thought, I've spread this playthrough out over, like, 5 years? Maybe 6 years? I need to start over. It's been long enough from the Let's Play that it's not going to feel too bad playing it from scratch again. And this year I decided to start up a new playthrough and play through it again. And I got to Ragwell Bridge and I got distracted. Which was a good thing, it turns out, because then they announced the Nintendo Switch 2 edition, which I got. So for anyone who has the Nintendo Switch 2 edition, you know that part in the oh my god, what's it called? The plains area where you meet Charlotte. That's where you get the quest to do the ether jet. That is literally where I had parked myself. And so I bought the Switch 2 upgrade, I loaded up the game, and right next to me was the quest to go and get the ether jet, which I thought was very funny. But yeah, today I finished the game. From that point to now, it's been about a week. I absolutely steamed through Xenoblade Chronicles, and I'm going to tell you what I thought, what my journey was like. I mean, I've already told you some of it, how I got here, but what I think about that world and its characters and how it affected me and all that good stuff. Because it is rare, as you may have surmised, that my attention span holds together for long enough for me to finish an RPG. And so, what kind of game is good enough to keep my attention for that long? This one. So the thing that instantly intrigued me about the world of Xenoblade Chronicles was its world. Like, it's just the Bionis and the Mechonis, these two continent-sized mecha who were fighting, and then one of them got its sword lodged in the other, and they haven't stirred for, I think it's meant to be like 1,000 years or something. And these mechs are so big, in fact, they're never actually referred to as mechs, but they're mechs. They're so big that people can live on them. Entire, I wouldn't say countries, but cities and stuff can live on them. And you get to explore it. You get to go up the Bionis and I did mention we're talking full spoilers. You get to go up to Mechonis as well, and so it's really fun. It's such a unique idea for a world to explore, and it is executed incredibly well. Like, for anyone who doesn't know me, I love playing MMOs, and I love going on these kinds of journeys, right? Even if I don't tend to finish for single player RPGs, I love going on these kinds of journeys. Like, for instance, Final Fantasy XIV, where you start one place and you go around and you go to the various cities and you meet various peoples and you uncover mysteries about the lore of the world and how it affects the present day and the conflicts of the present day and all this good stuff. And my favorite thing about those games is when we are exploring a world which doesn't have too much of a direct analog to our own real world. Like, don't get me wrong, I love that kind of stuff sometimes too, but the interesting thing for me was seeing this world of a Bionis and a Mechonis and being like, well, how did we get here? Like, how did we get to this place where you've got people living on a continent-sized mech and they're being assaulted by these soulless evil robots? And what do you mean suddenly one of them can talk? And what do you mean so on and so forth as various revelations kind of happen and the story unravels? And it's just, not only is it an incredible setting to explore and executed in a brilliant way, but it's also a really intriguing story to explore. Like, sure, you could boil it down to fantasy protagonist is a boy with a magic sword whose home gets attacked by an evil force, and now he has to go and get vengeance on them for what they did, killing his beloved, right? Like, that story's been told 1,000 times. But you know what hasn't been told 1,000 times? The details of that story, which is it's a boy with, I mean, okay, maybe the mysterious past bit is also played out, but like the magic sword has weird properties to it. For some reason it can't cut people, but it can cut machines, and for some reason Shulk is the only person who can wield it correctly. And then what's going on with the Mechon, and you know, like, why do they invade? Like, there's no kind of personality behind the invasion. They just seem to be almost like this like natural disaster, it feels like. What's going on with you know, just the whole setup here, like, right, like, to the characters in the story it's normal, to us it's not, and that's what makes it interesting. And then, yeah, as I mentioned, like, the way they execute on this setting is so fascinating. How you climb up like the leg of the Bionis and you go through Tephra Cave, and like you can, especially in some of the later game zones, you can really see the scale of the world, like especially the Mechonis hand, right? The Fallen Hand is probably, in my opinion, the best area to get a sense of scale, because not only are you at the bottom of a world looking up at the Bionis and the Mechonis and Sword Valley above you, but you're also running around this giant hand with, like, you know, digits to go up as like hills and, you know, up a ladder, and then you can go to the fingertip of one of them. And that's a very distinctive piece of, I guess, geometry, or, you know, biology as well. And I found that zone, more than any other, really sold the scale of the world, and it was so fun to kind of like do that. I also really enjoyed the zone that came after it. I think it's just called the Mechonis Field, where you go inside the Mechonis, and it's like so tall. That zone just keeps going up and up and up and up. It reminded me a bit of I forget the name of the original level in Super Mario 64, but the Mario Kart track that's based on it is called Tick-Tock Clock. It reminds me of that because, you know, the Mechon are kind of based on like these clockwork contraptions, and so the Mechonis' insides would be as well. And that was really fun to explore. And I think that is going to be the main highlight I take away from this game. I really liked the story, but the main highlight for me is going to be the setting. And I think that's such a unique thing to be able to say about a fictional story or world, right? Like, there are settings I love, but there are no stories I can think of where the setting is the highlight. And the fact that this game was on the Wii, like, that's insane. How did they pull this off on the Wii technology? That's bonkers. But yeah, the story itself was really fun as well. I really like Shulk as a protagonist, and just like his relationship with the other characters and his uncertainty and his unwillingness to share his visions sometimes, and how that gets him in trouble and all that stuff. And just the main conceit about we can change the future. and like using his visions to affect change in the world and stuff like that before it gets all crazy in the lore. Just like that basic premise is a really interesting and fun one to have to make your protagonist like unique. And the way that they weave that into the combat as well is really clever. Like, you do literally see the future and act to change it. Like, the combat wasn't my absolute favourite thing about this game. It was serviceable. Like, I did like the break, topple, and daze mechanics, but I think they did get a little bit too heavy-handed on the whole, like, oh, only Shulk's Monado can damage the Mechon until much later. And so you're going to have to enchant everyone, but you're going to have to make him auto-attack the Mechon for ages so that you can get your meter up, so that you can enchant everyone, so you're not all just bonking the guy and doing hardly any damage. Or the Telethia. Oh, the Telethia where you have to do the Monado Purge thing and stop it from being unattackable. That was really annoying. Like, there are some mechanics which I can see what they were going for because it ties into the lore and the story well, as I've already praised, but at the same time, sometimes they took it a little bit too far and it did become a bit tedious. I will say, I did turn on casual mode towards, I think I'm comfortable calling it the second half of the game, around partway through Sword Valley. And it wasn't because I was finding it completely impossible. Like, I was getting into the kind of the pattern of being like, okay, this fight's too strong for me, go back, do some more side quests, level up a bit more, come back, beat the boss. That was satisfying a handful of times, and then it kept happening, and I went, I would quite like to see the story in a timely manner, please. And maybe I could have done a better job of front-loading my journey with side quests. But when you get to Sword Valley and onwards, for a while, for a little chunk of time there's like hardly any side quests to do. I did have someone tell me you can go back and there will be some, but when you get to a certain point in the story, you don't want to keep going back, you know? Don't get me wrong, I did stop and do a bunch of side quests on the Mechonis Hand, and I think I missed some on Mechonis Field, but when you got to the city of the Mechon, I was like, Mechonis or Mechon? Whatever, I forget what it's called. It actually has a name, it begins with an A, I believe. But when you get to the city, I did do all of those side quests, which is nice because the city promptly blew up. But most of those quests were worth the money. But really, like, what I want to praise this game for is the inclusion of casual mode, and just, like, the way it allows you to tailor your experience. Like, are you someone who places a lot of value on a challenging gameplay loop and isn't really that fussed about witnessing the story in a timely manner? Sure. Continue on the normal difficulty, mess around with expert mode, whatever that is, sure. If you are someone who doesn't care so much about the combat and you just want to steam ahead and see the story, then casual mode is there. And for a second I was like, oh, I don't know, I don't normally do this. I don't normally lower the difficulty on these games down to easy just so I can see the story. But I decided to get over my stubbornness, and honestly I think it was the saving grace of me actually getting on and finishing this game. And I will say as well, I still felt like, you know, when I turned it on, I was a god for a little while. But because I was steaming ahead so much, by the time I reached the end of the game, I was like 5-6 levels underleveled. And so I did start having to think about combat a little bit more again, and the final boss fight, while it wasn't necessarily difficult, I did almost wipe at one point, and I did have to stay on my toes, and it was enough of a challenge to not just be a complete pushover. So I kind of tailored my own experience in that way, and I don't regret it. I've spoken to a lot of other people who are playing this game at the minute, and a lot of them as well do end up turning on casual mode, so I don't think that this is exactly a rare choice. I think after a while, just like the whole thing with the gameplay of being like, and this enemy, you need to do this with a Monado, and auto-attack for this long so you can do it, so the party members can do this, and then you need to watch out for this. It might have a spike when you topple it, which will send you all to sleep if you hit it. It's like, okay, so now I need to charge up my auto attack to get rid of that, but I can't do that because if I attack it, I'm going to go to sleep. Like, there's a few questionable choices, and so I think that's probably one of the reasons a lot of us just end up going on to casual mode, because it's like, I've had my fill of the combat. I have not had my fill of the story in the journey. But yeah, the story in the journey, you know, it starts off being a quest for vengeance for Fiora, for what the Mechon did to Fiora and Colony 9 and everything. And then as you travel through and you pick up more companions and you learn more about what's happening, naturally events do lead into a kind of larger lore-based story, and because it is a JRPG, we obviously end up fighting God. It does escalate quite dramatically, but what I really enjoyed about the journey was this slow accumulation of cast members and places and factions and just this building out of a world. It was done in such an organic way. Like, I think the pacing was really good, and I think that with a lot of RPGs that I love, sometimes the pacing suffers. Like, you can compare this game in so many ways to Final Fantasy XIV that it is a video unto itself. You could write a whole essay about it. There are so many weird coincidences alone, but also just like tropes of a genre which help, I suppose. But just like, I think my pitch of this game to people going forwards is gonna be, if you played through Final Fantasy XIV and you miss the experience of playing through an MSQ, sitting with story, clicking through dialogue, watching characters interact with each other and relationships build, exploring new places that are really interesting, it's so similar. It's so similar of a feeling to progressing the MSQ in Final Fantasy XIV. It scratches that same itch for me. But yeah, the one major difference I think Xenoblade Chronicles has over Final Fantasy XIV, other than, you know, setting and lore and story and all that, is pacing. I think Final Fantasy XIV can be very poorly paced, unfortunately, whereas I think this game is really well paced. Maybe it's because I turned on casual mode, but honestly, just like, the story just kept going and building at a rate which felt right. I felt like my questions were being answered at a decent pace and new questions were being kind of brought up at a decent pace. I was messaging friends who have played through this game and being like, oh my god, I think this might be this reason and this might be why this is happening and the answer to this could be this, and they're just like, and I did get some things right. And I did get some things wrong. One of my favourites is, and one last time, we are talking full spoilers here, one of my favorites was, when we first met Alvis, I was like, that kid's for Monado. And I was right, but kind of by accident, because I didn't really know what the Monado was. I thought the Monado was just a sword, as you're supposed to at that point in the story. So I thought that Alvis was like the spirit of the sword, you know? I grew up on Bleach, so I kind of was expecting this. But the Monado is something a whole lot more complicated, and I suppose that's a good springboard to talking about some of the end game kind of endpoints of a story and the deep lore and all that stuff. If I have one criticism about this game's story, it's that Shulk's ability to kind of manifest his own Monado at the end isn't really very clear as to why he can do that. Like, they do talk about it, and I'm sure if I played through it a second time, I might pick up a little bit more about why. But just as like a one-time only playthrough experience, it didn't feel wrong or anything. I was kind of expecting him to do it, but I was hoping for a little bit more of like almost a hard magic system explanation as to why he was able to do that. I think the given reason was just his faith in his ability to change the future and the love he held for people. The Monado is kind of revealed to be this more kind of metaphysical energy almost. Like, again, I don't have the best grip on the lore, and I don't know if that's going to be expanded in future DLC and games. I am planning on playing Future Connected after I finish recording this, by the way. And depending on how crazy or not crazy of an experience that is, I may record another one of these talking about it. From what I hear, it's pretty low stakes stuff, but I'm really hoping that we get to explore some of the new world that we see in the final cutscene in this game. But yeah, when it came to like, Shulk's been dead for years, and I did call oh my god, I forgot his name, Zanza the giant. I did call him secretly being an antagonist. I was messaging a friend, I was like, the game really wants me to think that I am going into the final boss fight right now, when I was making my way towards Egil, but I was saying, like, at this point of the story it doesn't make sense, because Shulk is questioning his own motivations. He doesn't necessarily have any reason to fight Egil other than like duty. The same reason anyone else would, but like, he has no personal motivation to go and fight Egil. He's got Fiora back and all this stuff, and he can even kind of understand where Egil is coming from. And I do really enjoy that, by the way. The idea that like we start empathizing with the leader of the of Mechonis and stuff like that. That's another thing that's very Final Fantasy XIV. But anyway, it's just kind of fun to see how the story scales from being attacked by Mechonis in Colony 9 to where we end up. But yeah, I was messaging my friend. I was like, I don't think Egil is gonna be the final boss. I think it's probably gonna be Zanza. And they were very good about not jumping at me and going. I mean, you know, the game does kind of signal that to us as well, but you know, I had some theories which are completely wrong, like Alvis actually harbors the soul of Zanza and stuff. No, but yeah, Zanza and Lady Mayneth being the two gods of this universe. My main question throughout the entirety of this game is, how the hell did the world get into this state? Like, are we in the far, far future of our world and we've just forgotten where we came from? Are we in the deep past of our world? Turns out, no, we're in a new incarnation of our world in a universe created by a god who used to be a human in the real world, who kind of destroyed the universe in his desire to make his own universe. And Mayneth, the other kind of god in this world, is the lady who tried to stop him and kind of ran up to him and tried to stop him. And then Alvis turns out to be the machine which they invented in order to, you know, make the universe happen. And that's Alvis is also the Monado, and that's, as I've already talked about, and that's kind of all linked together. Again, it gets a bit nebulous, it gets a bit hazy, but maybe I just need to study it more. But yeah, I really enjoyed how it all came together, how it ended up with fighting God, and how Shulk ended up manifesting his own Monado, and the choices they made at the end of the story where he said, I don't want to be a god, I just want to take every day as it comes. Like, Lady Mayneth's whole thing about, like, create a world where gods are not needed, that is what they have now done, and I'm so curious to see what happens in this world. Like, this story is one of those stories where it's, like, it's got an ending which... it's almost, I want to leave it alone and pretend nothing else happens because everyone's happy. You know, like, the world is a lot better. I really love the... okay, let's talk about the ending. I really love the ending. It's so wholesome after such a dark story. And I love the cinematic where you go through colonies. I believe it's meant to be Colony 6. And you can see, like, all the different peoples, like, living together in harmony. Like, the Homs and the Nopon and the Hyentia and the Machina. They're all living together and working together. And the streets are packed in a way that we've never really seen before. There's this sense of civilization on a scale that we've not really seen before in this world. And it's just so wholesome. The ending as well, where Fiora goes to the beach and she sees all her friends there and she's talking to Shulk and everything, and they talk about this new world. And I can't believe people had to wait 8 years for a sequel to this game. I would be so annoyed, because it really does set itself up for a sequel where, you know, Alvis tells Shulk, like, hey, you know, like, there's this world's infinite. This new world that we've made is infinite. There's so much more out there. And I think the implication is that this world isn't just a sea now. I think there are actually lands on it. But what the actual solid evidence we were shown was the universe expanding in that cutscene. So there is a whole infinite universe out there. They just, I guess, don't have the technology to go and explore it yet. This does give me new thoughts about what might happen with Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and 3, because I've noticed that the key art for 2 and 3 is connected. Like, one of them has a great big beast on the front of it, and the other has that same beast on the front of it, in a different kind of a context, which I think is very interesting. And having only had up to Magna Forest in my head for like the last 6 years, whenever I've seen people talk about Xenoblade Chronicles 2 or 3, and I've kind of caught glimpses of it, and I've never looked at it too closely, obviously, but like, I've seen that there's a whole different cast of characters and stuff. I mean, I should probably tell you my assumptions. My assumption is that Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I think Pyrrha's meant to be a sword spirit of sorts, right? Like what I thought Alvis was for the Monado. I think that's true. Other than that, I know like nothing else. I thought it took place on like a normal world. I have since been told it takes place on the back of like multiple giant mechs that aren't quite as big as the Bionis. Did I dream that? Is that something someone told me, or did I dream that? I might have dreamed that. But yeah, I'm very curious as to like, okay, like what's going on. So while part of me wants to kind of like stop there and be like, this feels like a very full circle story with a nice little bow tie at the end, and everything's all sealed and done, and everyone's happy, and we don't need to think about it anymore. I don't really have too many more questions. At the same time, I'm so curious about Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and 3 because back when I only knew up to Magna Forest's worth of this game, I remember thinking like, is Xenoblade Chronicles 2 going to be a prequel? And that's how we learn how the world got into this state. But no, I now know how the world got into this state. I do still think there could be the opportunity to explore a previous reality that Sansa had made. I should also quickly say, I think I do kind of know a bit of a spoiler for maybe Xenoblade Chronicles 3's DLC. Just like... yeah, I'm not going to say anything about it because I feel like there's probably going to be people who've clicked on this video knowing that they can safely listen to full spoilers for the first game, but maybe they haven't played the third game yet. But I'll talk about that when I get there, I guess. But yeah, just one last tidbit before I go and start Future Connected. Something that's quite funny about one of the reasons I decided to return this week specifically and continue playing Xenoblade Chronicles is... I don't currently have a whole lot of freedom to go and buy video games, and there have been a fair few video games that I've looked at and gone, I really want to get that video game and play it, but I can't right now, so I should really just focus on my backlog. You know what? Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Definitive Edition, or Nintendo Switch 2 Edition, has just come out. I'm going to go back to 1, and I'm going to try and play it again. And I did. And I think I was pretty successful at doing that. And if it sounds weird that I keep going on about, hey, look, I finished a game. Most people probably don't care that much when they finish a game. It's kind of rare that I finish a game that's this long. So, yay me. The only problem is now I really want Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And we're right back where we started. Anyway, this might have been a bit rambly. I think I kind of interrupted myself a few times and returned to some points a couple of times. So hopefully this made sense. But this is my immediate post-credit thoughts for Xenoblade Chronicles. I enjoyed this game immensely. I think if I had played it in my teenage years, there's a decent chance it could have ended up being my entire personality. As it is, you know, despite some kind of misgivings about the solidity of some of the lore about like the essence of the Monado and godhood and all that stuff, and maybe that should be vague. Other than that, I think it was an absolutely solid story with really fun characterization and setting and all that good stuff. I think it's a JRPG that everyone should play. I think anyone who has any interest in this genre of video game or type of story, like sci-fi fantasy story, I think they should be directed to this game because I think it's fair to call it a masterpiece. It's so good in what it sets out to do and how it accomplishes those things. And I'm tempted to New Game Plus it as well at some point. Like, not right now, but at some point I want to go through New Game Plus and see what that's about, because it's told me Shulk's going to have his true Monado, and that's going to be a bit weird, but we're also going to, like, maybe I could go and do a playthrough where I go and see all the heart-to-hearts and everything and do all of the side quests and just take my time with it in a way that I didn't this time around because I already know the story now. That might be fun. But yeah. That's about all I've got to say. Thanks for coming and listening. Let me know if you'd like to hear more of my time playing Xenoblade Chronicles in the future as I play those games. No promises I'm going to spend just a week playing 2 and just a week playing 3 though. We'll see how we go. But yeah, thanks for watching. Leave a like if you liked the video, and I will catch you in whatever I make next.